More of the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
All right, welcome back in. Zach Gelb Show on a Monday. Time in the Princeton Orthopedic Associates Studios, 4:15. Now joining us on the hotline does a tremendous job, along with Mike Mayock, calling the Eagles preseason games on Comcast Sportsnet, and also works for Westwood One and NFL Films, and that is the legendary voice of a Scott Graham, who joins us right now. Scott, Zach Gelb, thanks for a few minutes, and how are you?
All right, Zach, how you doing?
Well, I'm doing great, and I appreciate you giving us a few minutes today. So they had a nice little giveaway over the weekend in Philadelphia where they gave out a Harry Callas statue to the fans as the statue that is outside the stadium. So that was a nice giveaway. You worked with Harry for a very long time, and I've heard you talk about him at length in a class, actually, when I was at Temple University. But can you just describe the impact Harry had in your life?
It's actually not easy to describe because he was, not only he was a mentor in a lot of ways, he was a friend, a very good friend. He kind of showed the way, and he didn't do it by saying, "Hey, watch me, and I'm going to show you the way." That's not how he was. That's not what he did. It was by example. He taught me things about myself as a person, as a broadcaster that I had no idea about. Made me laugh. He was like that pretty much with everybody. It's not a unique story that I'm telling you. And, when he passed away, it was obviously very, very sad. But in many ways, that's what he wanted. He wanted to continue being the person that he was and the broadcaster that he was right until he was leaving this world, and that's exactly what ended up happening for him. And, that statue, it's great to see that people got the replica of the giveaway. I made a documentary a couple of years ago about the making of that statue, and we won an Emmy for it. And that was absolutely one of the great labors of love that we've ever seen, because it was a statue that was made entirely from fan donations because the fans loved Harry.
And with that being said, that documentary that you made that won a Mid-Atlantic Emmy, I understand, and I heard you told this before, but tell it again, that you went to interview the players and then you lost audio, and that just changed the entire thinking of the way that you actually produced that documentary.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, in all honesty, it's very possible that there was a little intervention from above at some point from Harry, who might have been telling me that I was going about it the wrong way, because we did go out with our crew and did interviews with Jimmy Rollins and Chase Utley and Shane Victorino, a couple of other people. And when all was said and done, we got back to our facility and found out that there was a technical glitch and all of the audio was missing. So, we were a couple weeks away from having to put this documentary on the air, and we had just done all of that work with that crew for an entire day, and it was gone. And, you begin to take a look at things and say, well, wait a minute. What would be the right way to go here? I couldn't go back to that well and get all of the things that we had gotten before, with that same emotion, and that it would not have been the same to go back and try to get those same interviews. So instead, we went to the parking lot for a couple of days during a Phillies homestand, and we talked to a bunch of fans about Harry. And because the film was supposed to be talking about the fact that it was the fans who raised the money for it, and it was a fan and Harry moment of love after his passing. I mean, that's what I should have been doing, I guess, all along. As it turned out, it made for a better film.
No doubt about that, and clearly you won a big award for that as we're talking to Scott Graham, and it's still incredible. He's passed away in 2009, and still to this day, whenever you mention the name Harry Callas in Philadelphia, or even around the world, it makes people smile, and they think about that incredible voice that he did have. And what was so special about Harry was his connection, and when we talk about, or we talk to former players, they still rave about what they meant to him during his career, and then also the fans as well. That's what's just remarkable, that he left us in 2009, but he still has a big impact in the Philadelphia sports scene when we think and look back at him.
He always will, and I would imagine at some point or other there will be a generation that will go by, and the young kids now who never get an opportunity to hear Harry call a game, dads are going to try to pass that down, moms are going to try to pass that down and say, it was something that was pretty special. So I guess there's a day where, the light kind of dwindles for all legends and memories, but there's no doubt about the fact that it's there, and it should be there because he was such a tremendous part of what the Philadelphia community was, what baseball was in Philadelphia. I mean, he was iconic, and there was a long period of time in which baseball in Philadelphia was not very good in terms of being competitive on the field, but Harry was always there, and that's, I believe, what makes him so beloved with the fans still to this day.
And we've been very fortunate in Philadelphia with the amount of announcers that we get to listen to. They really have a rich tradition in announcing. What is that like for you to be a part of that rich tradition of broadcasters?
I mean, just a small part. And it was tremendous to be able to spend the time that I did with Harry. I knew Whitey and worked in the booth, although I wasn't doing play-by-play at the time. Probably for, I guess, 6 or 7 years before he passed away. So I got an idea of who Whitey was. I worked as an intern way back when with Bill Campbell when I was still in college. Knew Gene Hart, didn't get an opportunity to spend a lot of time around Gene Hart. But these days, I'm sitting on a plane the other night, coming back from Pittsburgh with Merrill Reese. I mean, there have been I agree with you, a tremendous number of iconic broadcasters, but broadcasters also that the fans of Philadelphia have taken just a tremendous liking to and hold in the highest regard, and it's returned in the opposite direction from the guys who are in those seats. That's one common thread that goes through all of that all those names that I just mentioned. It's not only are they held in the highest regard by the fans, but they also hold the fans in the same regard.
One more on Harry Callas as we're talking to Scott Graham before we transition over to the Eagles. A little birdie, actually, he may be a big birdie. My father, Bob Gelb, who you know very well because you interned for him, told me you do a incredible Harry Callas impersonation. Can we hear a little bit about it right now?
The funny part about why your dad would know that was I was in college at Penn in 1985, and because my voice register was always a little bit on the lower side, like everybody else, I always tried and messed around with a Harry impression. And the radio station in Philadelphia that broadcast the games that your dad worked for announced that they were having a Harry Callas sound-alike contest. And if you came out to Sportsline at the Ribbit restaurant, you could audition for an opportunity to be in the finals. Well, I did that. I made it to the finals. It was between games of an actual real doubleheader on a rainy night in early October of '85. Nobody was there. Not nobody, but almost nobody was there. And 5 of us got taken out on the field in a limo to home plate to do all to do the same line. And Harry was there greeting all of us. And I won on the applause meter, and I got to go upstairs and do an inning of play-by-play with Harry and Whitey. For a while, Harry would consistently needle me about that a little bit. He stopped, which was odd for him because once Harry started with the needle, he never went away with the needle. But he would actually, early on in my career being around the Phillies, he would actually look at people and say, "This is Scott Graham. He does a heck of an impression of me." So, he's always been a character, and he has always been a joy to remember. And through this conversation right now, I got a smile on my face. So.
All right, so let's get to the Eagles, and you're doing their preseason games for Comcast Sportsnet. And in New York, and also Philadelphia, there's 2 big issues now with the football teams. For the Giants, it's the issue with the domestic violence of Josh Brown, and with the Eagles, it's the peptide issue with Lane Johnson. And the Eagles general manager, Howie Roseman, would not comment on it. The Giants general manager and Jerry Reese would not comment on that issue as well when it comes to Josh Brown. So don't you think that these general managers and owners do have a responsibility to answer these questions since the public eye that we operate in right now when it comes to sports?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know that a general manager in a situation like that has a responsibility. I think the responsibility lies on the shoulders of the player. I think if there is an issue that crosses over from a legality issue to one that affects the football team, then that's where the general manager needs to respond. I think, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I understand the corporate aspect of it, and I understand, the responsibility and somebody having to be called on the carpet. At the same time, first of all, I've got to tell you, I'm not familiar with the situation you're talking about, because I am kind of in bunker mentality here right now with what I'm doing in Philadelphia. So I've not paid one bit of attention to what you're talking about. So commenting on it on my part is probably irresponsible. What I can tell you, though, is I think that the responsibility of facing up to whatever it is that needs to be asked falls clearly on the shoulders of the individual who is being questioned.
So let me ask you this, and Lane Johnson did address it when it comes to the Eagles issue separately, and I understand why Howie Roseman can't officially address something until he hears that official announcement from the league, but what I will ask you is, in this situation, there was the thought of a communication issue between Doug Peterson and Howie Roseman. You're very involved with the team right now. Do you see any communication problems?
I'm very involved with the team, but let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
If there were a communication problem between Doug Peterson and Howie Roseman, do you think the first thing that they would be doing is saying, hey, let's go talk about this problem that we're having with our play-by-play guy for the preseason games who we see for 4 weeks out of the year?
Well, I don't know what stories that you hear on the plane.
But I don't think that there's a communication gap, and I'm not entirely sure of how all of this came down. I also don't know, and this is just me, and maybe the difference is between yours and my age. Mm-hmm. I don't know why anybody cares. I don't know why anybody cares what Doug Peterson knew when. I don't know what difference that makes to anything.
Yeah, well, the only thing I could say is let's just say
gives you something to talk about in August. I mean, it gives the talk radio guys something to talk about in August.
Sure, but let's just say if he found out let's say the upstairs found out in July, and then the end of July, and then Doug didn't find out until that August 9th date. That's why I could see why fans would care and why talk show radio hosts would care, because you would think that the general manager would inform the head coach about that situation. But with that being said, maybe they just misspoke and that's what happened in the heat of the moment after the game. But that's why I think it's such a big issue. And I thought the Eagles should have addressed it. And then you could comment on Lane Johnson at a further date when you have all the official information.
And again, it's the when it is addressed to the public is one part of the question. The when it's addressed internally is the other part of the question. I can't speak to either one of those questions, and I understand the need for there to be communication and for Doug Peterson to know who he's going to battle with on the first game of the year, in the first weekend of the year, game one. But at the same time, I also know that still up until X date, nobody knew that was for certain to begin with. So, and again, in terms of there being an official announcement of some kind, you don't know that you're definitively without Lane Johnson until the league tells you you're without Lane Johnson. So, as you walk in and you're trying to create what you're trying to create, I would imagine that, you have an idea if you're sitting in that position. Is there an appeal process involved? Is there any possibility of an appeal process involved? Is it possible I've got him weeks 1 through 4 and then I lose him the rest of the season? I don't know what I'm going to plead complete ignorance on this. I don't know. But that's the only thing that I could say. Maybe they could have had somebody in at right tackle earlier in game 1 of the preseason. That's the only difference that I can see.
Scott Graham joins us. So let's get to the defense, because that's been the positive part about this team, and they were exceptional in preseason game number 2 from what we saw in Pittsburgh. Just what stands out to you so far about Jim Schwartz?
He is as intense gets. He goes by his standard and his standard alone. It's something that he's learned over the years and grown from his relationships with a whole bunch of people in the world of football, and he's been around in football for a long time. He truly believes that 4 guys can beat 5 and get to the quarterback more often than not, and can get the pressure on the quarterback. Then it's incumbent upon the guys behind them to come up and fill those gaps and play downhill on the run. the players have bought into this because they, in a lot of ways, have thought that last year's defensive setup was not aggressive enough. And if you'll never meet a player in the National Football League that says, you know what, we want to be less aggressive. I would really like to see if I can sit back and let the offense dictate things to me. Players want to be aggressive defensively, especially guys in the defensive line. And the fact that he's got them running downhill, he's got his front four that are trying to get into the backfield on every play, run or pass. Their eyes are alight with that. They love that.
And today, Doug Peterson announced that Stephen Tulloch will be joining the team. He should be in Philadelphia tomorrow. But with that being said, we know that the Eagles did lose a veteran presence in the offseason with D'Amico Ryans as his time in Philadelphia came to a close. How important do you think that is to bring in a veteran presence like a Stephen Tulloch, someone that is also familiar with what Jim Schwartz does on defense?
There's got to be some importance to it, and the linebacking core, the three of them, all fairly on the young side. I mean, I know Kendrick's been around for a while now, but he's not a gray-haired old veteran by any stretch of the imagination, and he also hasn't been on the field during the course of preseason, the first two games so far. And you've got Hicks in the middle, who is a second-year player. So, no doubt, bringing in some veteran leadership there is a good idea. And again, when you start looking at where their depth was probably, I don't know if it's thinnest or youngest in terms of the defensive side of the ball. There's no doubt it was in terms of the linebackers. So, the hope would be that that's something that helps solidify things, and that, defensively, that they still continue to play the ball-hawking style that they're playing over the course of the first two preseason games.
I really love this front seven, and I think they're going to do wonders under Jim Schwartz, and maybe the offense won't put them in the best of spots and they turn over the football, but I think that this team for a bunch of years is going to be set up nicely under Jim Schwartz. But I want to get to that defensive line, and I know Fletcher Cox is going to generate all the attention because of what he does on each and every play and the amount of money that he is getting paid, and he should be. That's the sexy storyline right now. But Benny Logan on a contract year, I just think he's going to have a monster year, Scott. I love what I'm seeing from him.
Well, again, in a contract year, with the ability to get himself to the position where, his line mate did, absolutely. That certainly is a motivation. But at the same time, you're talking about a grouping of guys there that have a little bit of a pedigree. And it's interesting, too, to look now at what you're seeing from the grouping of players and where they can be played. That's kind of fun to me. The fact that Graham is going to be able to play on both sides on the outside, they'll be able to do a little bit of that. They'll be able to spell a Connor Barwin in a situation like that if need be, with a guy like Brandon Graham, who can be, obviously very, very active and has the ability to make plays. The 4-3 setup is better suited to a number of the guys who are in this set, and the defensive linemen certainly there. But Vinnie Curry, he got his contract, and he got the vote of confidence from up above, and he's a pure pass rusher. And one would hope that he gets an opportunity in this system to, get his hand in the ground, peel your ears back, and fire away at getting to that quarterback, because that's kind of what he's there for.
Wrapping up with Scott Graham, who joins us right now, does a tremendous job for the Eagles preseason games, also Westwood One and NFL Films. Scott, what I want to get to here is, because you're around the team right now a bunch with Sam Bradford, how much of a difference do you realize in the confidence of Sam Bradford from last year to this year in the preseason?
Sam told it to us really easily, in a very easy to understand way the other night when we first got down and landed in Pittsburgh, and we had a couple of meetings. We talked to a couple of players. He said the most comfortable he has ever been in an offense in his career was his third year with the Rams, the year he ended up getting hurt in the preseason. But it was because he understood the terminology. He understood not only the terminology, he understood what the offense was trying to do beyond just the play itself. He understood the philosophy beyond the terminology of that offense. So he was, as comfortable as could be. Well, he's at, 5 different offensive coordinators now? When you start talking about a guy getting an opportunity to get comfortable and have confidence, boy, he's being asked a lot. This offense is better suited to him than last year's offense was. He likes to be able to come to the line of scrimmage. He likes to be able to not only throw with accuracy, which there's a tremendous premium put on throwing with accuracy in this offense, he likes the ability to come to the line and know that he can check down. And he didn't have that opportunity last year. You saw as the year went on last year, he stayed, largely healthy. And as the year went on last year, he got better and better. And I think that that's probably going to end up happening in this offense as well. And I think that he has a pretty clear idea of, how his future is going to play out in the National Football League and how important it is that he has a big year this year in order to ensure that.
And before we let you run, he's going to need some talent around him, and the wide receiver unit has not been great so far in the preseason, and they made the move to bring in Dorial GreenBeckham. I know you only saw a limited amount of Dorial GreenBeckham, and who could blame the Eagles for I was surprised he even played, but I think that's a low-risk, high-reward move. What intrigues you about Dorial GreenBeckham?
Same thing that intrigues you about him and everybody else about him. He's big, he's fast, he's strong. He is he's got every tool that's there in terms of the physical side of things, and he has the ability to be able to, work his way in an understanding of what's going on. I don't know whether you start reading and hearing things that have been said by previous coaches, and it's a matter of getting consistent. And I don't know if that consistency is because of a disinterest or because it's not something that comes easily to him, but that's been a problem for him, certainly at the NFL level, and trying to, the Titans of all things, the last thing in the world they wanted to see was their number 40 overall pick going before he got a chance to play in his second season in the league. So there was a reason he is here. And I would imagine that reason, if you trace back and you listen to the things that were said from the people in Tennessee, it's because he was never able to get to that level of consistency in the time he was there. And I thought it was interesting that the coach was talking about the fact that there was an effort there. He wanted to please the coaching staff. He wanted to do the right thing. It just didn't happen often enough. And I think that's really the key. I mean, clearly, when you look at the group of receivers that are here right now, Jordan Matthews has done some good things over the course of his first couple of years in the league, and I think that Jordan Matthews is a tremendous receiver for that slot. I don't mean spot. It can be the slot. It may not be the slot, whichever. But once you get past that, you don't have a guy on this roster in terms of a wide receiver who's got a pedigree of doing it consistently over multiple years in the league. Chris Givens and Ruben Randall, they're two guys that if they have an opportunity to win jobs and prove themselves in the league for a long time by being here this year. GreenBeckham is now in that category as well, but when you talk about physical upside, his clearly outweighs everybody's.
Scott, love your voice. Always love talking to you. Appreciate the insight, and enjoy Indianapolis this weekend.
You got it. Thanks.
Thanks so much. There's Scott Graham joining us on the Zach Gelb Show. Fox Sports 920, the Jersey, 609-919-9200. And my point with what happened with the Giants and Josh Brown and also the Eagles and Lane Johnson was I just think that these teams in the public world that we live in now, where everyone has an opinion on Twitter and Facebook. And I know these teams and the general managers and owners can't always cater to the fans, but the way that things are covered now in the National Football League, I think that when you have these big issues, that these teams, to the public, they need to have a comment. And with the Eagles, I'm not expecting them to fully get into what happened with Lane Johnson because there hasn't been an official announcement from the league. But with the Eagles, when you have that possible communication problem out there and people are speculating if that communication problem does exist, I thought they could have answered it in the questions that were asked by Jeff McClain in that press conference last week. And they didn't. And I believe that's a disservice to the fan base. And they could have put a stop to all the speculation if they would have just addressed it. As far as the Giants, I think it's an embarrassing effort that John Mara said, I have nothing to say about Josh Brown. Check with me next week. Maybe I'll change my mind. And then general manager Jerry Reese said nope and nothing when asked to talk about Josh Brown. And that was already an official announcement. I understand why the Eagles would not comment on it, but I thought they could have nipped this thing in the bud last week. And as far as the Giants, I just have no explanation why they didn't talk when an official announcement already came down that they're going to lose their kicker for one game this season, which I think is extremely weak because of domestic violence. So this is the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. We'll take a quick break. When we get back, we have to get in what is turning into a very somber story. A lot of stuff. We addressed it last week with Doc Gooden, but a lot of articles have been written, and the details are very ugly. We'll get to that on the other side of the break. Time, the Princeton Orthopedic Associates Studios, 440.